Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Telford and Wellington Council Planning Committee. This evening's meeting is held in public to ensure that all those involved or interested in the planning applications can see and hear how the decisions are made. It's important that the speakers are able to present their information without interruption and that the council members of the committee are able to hear and consider the material presented. Only those people who have been notified are able to speak. I ask everyone else to remain quiet, not to interrupt the meeting and to allow the members to make their decisions. I would remind everyone that council meetings can be photographed or recorded, and I ask all participants to recognise the importance of the planning process. And please, will everybody turn off their phones or silence them, please. I haven't got mine with me tonight, so I can't. I can't do what I did last week.
Mine's on solid.
Okay. Item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence.
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Ian Fletcher and Councillor Veronica Fletcher as substitutes, and we have apologies from Councillor Gemma Offland, but unfortunately there's no substitute.
Yeah. Gemma is ill, poorly, gone down today with something. Right. Item 2, declarations of interest.
Mr. Chair, point 4. It's in my ward, but I've had no dealing with it. Portico is.
Yeah. Veronica.
Yes, item 5.5, TWC 2022-0596, Abacus Day Nursery. I'm a member of St George's Priory Parish Council, and there's a part of the application that refers to the gower. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the application TWC 2021-0806 land Corner of Colliers Way. I'm a ward member for Ketley and Overdale, and also parish member for Overdale and Lowley Parish. I would declare that I have not taken any part in any of the discussions about this application.
Thank you. Jim.
I'm on the Stirchley Recreation one. I'm a parish councillor. I haven't had any dealings with it on this application, but I will abstain from commenting on it.
Thank you, Jim. Right. Any deferred or withdrawn applications?
No, Chair.
Any site visits planned?
No, Chair.
Not before June. And planned application for determination on item 5. I intend to do them in this order. 5.1 is the Maddocks Hill and Quarry Little Wenlock. 2 is the land accord and Colliers Way / Rock Road. And the third one I'm going to do is land adjacent to the site of for Abacus Day Surgery. And then 5.3, 5.4, 5.6. So it's 5.1, 5.2 and 5.5. So we go to Maddocks Hill and Quarry Little Wenlock. Andy?
Yes, that's me, thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This application seeks approval for an educational field centre to run courses for subject matters including forestry, geology, experimental archaeology and timber frame construction. Courses would be delivered through a mix of residential and non-residential services. The former would be limited to adults and targeted at higher education participants. Most courses would be run by part-time tutors, likely 2 to 4 tutors per day. A maximum of 38 participants would be present on site, 20 of which could be on residential courses, suggested to be operated on a week basis, and making use of 5 proposed camping pods with the amenity block set within the clearing. A maximum of a further 18 participants could consist of non-residential students and tutors. The site itself is set 350 metres off the adopted highway, off the Hatch, when heading south towards Wenlock from the Reeking. The application is being called in by the ward councillor, Councillor Jackie Seymour, with objection from the parish council and members of the public. These consist of these are mixed in nature around the principle, concerns around the applicant and their intentions for the site, as well as technical matters. A comprehensive written update has been circulated, addressing public comments received since publication of the report, and I'm able to verbally update the receipt of 3 photographs which will be shown during the speakers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. I have a number of speakers on this one. Can I call Jackie Seymour first, please? Evening, Jackie.
Good evening. Right. This kind of project is generally one I would support, but it has to be in the right place, and this is not it. First, it is in the Wrekin strategic landscape area, which is not for development. Once any kind of development is permitted, incremental changes will creep in, especially when they are likely to involve the inadequacy of solar panels 45 metres at the bottom of a tree-lined quarry, and the insufficiency, most of the time, of runoff rainwater to provide shower, toilet and washing facilities for up to 38 people every day. I do not see any critique or comment on how much power or water is likely to be needed or produced, how it would be stored, and if inadequate, how the problem would then be addressed. For me, though, one of the most important issues is that of access to the Hatch Lane, which has been completely ignored by the planners, other than to say that, in the view of the traffic it would now carry, there should be a condition for the lane to be maintained. Hatch Lane has been of great concern to local residents almost since the quarry closed in the 1980s. Back then it was a byway open to all traffic. Over the years, residents became more concerned as the lane was being used for criminal purposes, mostly drug taking and burning of stolen cars. Efforts by myself and the parish council got nowhere until a local farmer took it upon himself to block the Wrekin end of the lane with some large boulders. The other end was already blocked with a locked gate. That worked for a long time until an objection was raised, and probably some 7 or 8 years ago the boulders had to be removed. At that point TWC finally stepped in, and following an inquiry the track was redesignated as a bridle way only. A locked gate was provided and access made available only to walkers and horse riders. The fact that Hatch Lane is no longer open to traffic seems to have been totally ignored by the planners. Neither have they addressed the consequences of opening it up. How long before it once again becomes a criminal's paradise? Never mind the vulnerability of the field centre, if on occasions it is ever left unattended. Also ignored are the effects on the Wrekin parking problems. Soon there will be a full chargeable parking facilities at the Wrekin, enforcement on illegal parking, and some order on the local roads at long last re-established. But how long before a newly opened and maintained lane, so convenient to the Wrekin, is discovered by those who do not want to pay for parking? It can hardly be double yellow lined. It will completely undermine the purpose of the site. I therefore urge you to refuse this application. Thank you.
Jackie. Councillor Howard Betts, please. Got 3 minutes, Howard.
Thank you. I'm Howard Betts, Chair of Little Wenlock Parish Council. Little Wenlock Parish Council has been given the opportunity to make comment on this and similar applications 3 times over the last 3 years. Each time the comments we made were objections. They're listed at 7.2 in the report from the Planning Officer. The site is within the Shropshire Hills area of outstanding natural beauty and the Wrekin strategic landscape area. Those titles are self-explanatory. In the Telford and Wrekin local plan, the landscape in this area is mentioned as having several prime examples of archaeology, geology and wildlife. Hatch Lane was closed as a bridleway, as a highway, when the quarry closed in the 1980s. Access along it is as a public right of way and access to property by landowners. There is a long history of antisocial behaviour along the lane until the rights of way team installed a single bar gate. This only allows access as a bridleway. At our March Parish Council meeting on Monday this week, in the public session, a resident pointed out that when all the parking for the Wrekin will have to be paid for, then Hatch Lane, open to traffic, could become a potential free car park to visitors to the Wrekin. The access off Wellington Road is poor, and that area is busy with local traffic and tourism traffic. Little Wenlock Parish is designated as an area for no open market development, allowing housing only on exceptional sites in certain circumstances. Is the committee certain that a warden's house fits this policy? There is no running water, mains electricity or drainage on site. Indeed, there is no mains water in the area, with properties in the area using private supplies. So in conclusion, Little Wenlock Parish Council opposes this application. Thank you.
Edward Hanlon, please, and Matthew Fennell Fox. I understand you're doing a double act.
We are indeed.
Yes. Going to attempt to anyway.
You share the 3 minutes.
Yes. So I'm going to speak first. I'm Matthew Fennell Fox. So I'm a water engineer with 12 years experience. The ditch to which treated effluent discharges is intermittent in its flow, and nothing provided by the applicant has proven this is not the case. This was the subject of previous objections by the council drainage team. I provided photos from the 8th of March showing no flow, and it's questionable whether a ditch is even present at the discharge location. So we've got a photo here showing the ditch at the bottom of the site, and then there's another photo that I've got just here showing no water present in the ditch on the 8th of March during heavy snow. Additionally, there's no culvert at the intersection of the ditch with footpath 55, causing all the water to run down Hatch Lane from this location. This ditch runs through the SSI into Wrekin Reservoir, which is now used for fishing. Wrekin Reservoir has a spillway out of it which regularly does not overtop. This creates a severed system to which treated effluent will now be discharged. The site and surrounding properties additionally have no mains public water supply. Maddocks Quarry sits within the Wrekin strategic landscape and is home to a wide variety of species. These species would have been located if surveys had been undertaken at an appropriate time. They were undertaken on 7 occasions, with only one of these, in May 2019, falling within the breeding season of many rare bird species, such as redstart, a well-documented species on the Arkle and Wrekin, which nested in Maddocks Quarry in 2021. This is against government guidance for survey timings provided by Natural England, and is just an example of how the surveys don't comply with published guidance.
First quote, applications won't be supported where they have harmful impact on local wildlife and local geological sites features. Building over the LWS and LGS is a permanent loss and harm, as unique features can't be replaced by net gain in an unknown off-site location. Report takes no notice at all of these policies. Second, this uninhabited area has low daytime footfall. Save for a condition on music, there's complete failure to appraise or mitigate intensified visitor and especially residential pressures. Third, sports, archery and live action roleplay have no respect for designations. Fourth, quote, designated biodiversity sites must be protected from indirect impact of increased visitor pressure. Site numbers mean high level encroachment and disturbance day and night on flora and fauna instantly accessed on internal footpaths. There is no regard given to wider biodiversity impact. Fifth, the sites can't sustain timber-intensive activities of building and woodland fieldwork. The site's grassland, ancient woods, LWSs and wet woodland curtails forestry, coppicing, charcoal, fire cooking, etc. Finite natural resources will rapidly be exhausted, risking depletion of surrounding woods. Practical archaeology and geology suggest disturbance on the LGS. Finally, the site operates year-round, so there's no enforceable stop on the warden being a permanent inhabitant. This will normalise woodland residency, irreversibly changing the amenity and character of the Wrekin Forest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask if we may see those photographs that have been displayed?
They'll be on the...
I can't see them from here.
They've been put on the computer. If you want to come round and have a look, you can do, Veronica. But first of all, I need to have Joe Salt, the applicant's agent. Yes, Joe, you've got 3 minutes.
Good evening, sorry. I'm Joe Salt from Base Architects, and I'm here to speak in support of the application for the Educational Fieldwork Centre in the redundant quarry at Maddocks Hill. Obviously, Ms Gittins, the planning officer, has presented the scheme following extensive and very proactive engagement with us, and obviously the recommendation from the officer is from us support. We appreciate and completely understand some of the concerns raised by third parties, which can be broadly summarised as highways, access, rights of way, ecology and the proposed educational use. To briefly touch on these points, but not to reiterate anything within the assessment or the conclusions of the technical consultees, we actually don't believe the proposal will cause any sort of harm to these concerns. For complete clarity, the proposed development is for an educational centre rather than any commercial clamping or holiday site. It will be totally educational. And to be honest, from our perspective, the site presents an amazing opportunity to locate an educational facility that focuses on ecological fieldwork and geological investigation that are fundamental characteristics of the Wrekin and the Arkle. Furthermore, the use of the site will be strictly controlled by a Section 106 legal agreement which the applicant has agreed to and which is far stricter than the usual planning conditions. The ecological assessment and surveys that accompany the application were found that there would be no harm to the existing wildlife and biodiversity net gain can be achieved. Protected species wouldn't be impacted, and the council's ecology officer also agrees with that assessment. The existing rights of way won't be affected, and the layout of the centre has been designed around a proposed bridleway through the site that is currently under consideration. The access track up to the site will be upgraded to benefit both the users of the site and the existing public right of way, and the barrier will be retained and controlled by the warden at the site to stop any access from the public going up there via car. The site will be self-sufficient, and the sustainable infrastructure and renewable energy will form part of the educational delivery of the site. There are no current rights of way through the site, but as has been mentioned previously, it has been a historic hotspot for antisocial behaviour. This proposal will not provide will provide an exciting educational opportunity, whilst also discouraging that antisocial behaviour, creating a safer and more accessible environment for all. We really believe this proposal is unique in that it will be the first of its kind within the UK and makes best use of a disused quarry. It is a celebration of the history of the area, which we hope will provide benefits to the wider locality and all that Telford can enjoy. We at Base have been involved since the beginning of this journey through the pre-application process and through the long-running planning application. Part of the reason for this length of determination was the proactivity of your officers working very closely with us to ensure that the proposal could be the best it could and mitigate any concerns. Thank you all.
Thank you, Joe. Andy, it's back to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we as the local authority fully appreciate the importance to the public of the Wrekin, as shown or heard by the speakers. This is why we've taken over a year of negotiating and consideration of amendments and additional information before we've been able to recommend approval. There are now no technical objections or grounds to refuse the application. We as the local planning authority appreciate the concern that the site may operate in the same manner as the applicant's existing facility in the south of England, which has a more social recreational offer. However, this is a very different proposal, and we are satisfied that we can appropriately control the use through planning conditions and a Section 106 agreement that the applicants agreed to enter to ensure that it operates as a field study centre. As such, officer recommendation to yourself as members is for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. For committee to discuss? Graham.
Can you reiterate why water is not a planning issue when there's toilet blocks and a shower there, and also no cooking facilities on site when there are going to be people with residential?
Yeah, so the provision of a water main wouldn't require planning permission, so that's why we don't take it into account. It is a building regulations issue that they would consider as part of as any sort of normal building regulations assessment would do. In terms of the cooking facilities, because of the nature of the use, the proposal is that they'll have open fires. It's obviously an educational facility where they're respecting the land and that they're being taught primitive, for want of a better word, cooking skills. So hopefully that answers your questions about the water and the cooking.
Just a question on Hatch Lane itself. Will it be maintained in any way by anybody? The mention of parking, people being people will try to park anywhere, we know that. So what would be in place to stop them? I mean, I know there's a barrier, but people will park in front of the barrier. What can be done to stop that from happening?
In terms of, so Councillor Scott, do you mean people visiting the Wrekin parking in front of the barrier?
Well, yes, I was at the Wrekin today and there were dozens and dozens of people parking wherever they could, and people will do that. So, you know, can we be assured that this won't happen in this particular area?
Well, from the users of this site, as we heard, that the warden who would be in place when the students are visiting, they would be responsible for opening up the gate, which is one of our slides. In terms of people parking in front of the barrier, that's the sort of the situation that exists at the minute. The landowner has got a legal right of vehicular access over Hatch Lane, so that wouldn't be any different in that respect.
So people couldn't get in without the warden letting them in?
Yeah, that's how it would operate. Yeah.
Nigel.
Yeah. Well, I've got a few concerns. I mean, one of the things is that if an emergency situation arises on this site, it seems difficult to access. And if there's a fire, you've got open fires there, and so if there's a fire and there's no water supply, it's going to be very, very difficult for emergency services to actually do their job and try and sort the situation out. And you know, and okay then, so apparently not having a water supply isn't a planning issue, although it seems a bit weird to me. Certainly the health and safety of the people using it is a planning consideration, because obviously we don't do buildings without fire exits and things like that. So you know, sort of I'd be interested to know what's, you know, sort of why this particular site is so much favourable, and surely there would be other sites on the Wrekin that perhaps would be afford more protection to the people that are actually using it. And on 7.8 there's mentioned about Shropshire Wildlife Trust. They objected, and now they don't, and it says after amendments. So I'd like to know what the amendments are that change the minds of the Shropshire Wildlife Trust. Now the applicant's agent sort of pointed out and said that there wasn't a public right of way. Yeah, at 8.17 it says that there is a public right of way. So, and if there's a gate across it, well then it's not a public right of way, is it? So really, you know, is there a public right of way, yes or no? And if it's going to be gated, well then it's not going to be able to be used by the public whenever they want it to. It's only going to be able to be used when the warden actually lets them in. On 8.36, it's about the safety of at the base of the slopes. Because according to the report, you know, there have been instances whereby there's been instability with the slopes, and it's not clear in the report as to whether or not there is going to be a clearance of the slopes to make sure that there again that the people using this are actually going to be in a safe environment. I mean, you know, sort of, my other concern is, you know, you've got a site here which has got no water, it's got no drainage, it's got no facilities, no electricity or anything, and yet there doesn't seem to be much explanation as to how a reliable power source is going to be provided. If you've got 30, 40 people there, well then it's going to need a fairly reliable power source. So, you know, sort of, I'd like answers to all of those, because at the moment I'm not minded to support this, because you know, sort of it's a great idea and I'd love to spend some time there, to be honest, but I'm not too sure that this is an appropriate location for it to be sited.
Andrew, can you
Yeah.
answer the questions?
Hopefully, Chair. So in terms of the emergency access for fire appliances, we've outlined within the update that we've added a condition to demonstrate compliance, discussions with Shropshire Fire Safety Service to for the provision of, for example, we've said a charged static tank of at least 45,000 litres of water. So that would possibly be one measure that would satisfy Shropshire Fire Safety in the absence of the site being accessible within 45 metres of an adopted highway. So
Just for the use of the fire, or would that be part of the water supply?
that would have to be maintained for the fire itself, because it wouldn't be drinkable. So there's a separate tank going to be for the water as well, which would be replenished regularly. In terms of Shropshire Wildlife Trust, the additional information that I mentioned before consisted of some extra surveys for dingy skipper butterflies and the peregrine falcons. So that's what removed their objection, and they've asked for the butterfly to form part of the biodiversity enhancement plan. In terms of the public right of way, so the lane from the adopted highway is an existing footpath, and there's a definitive map modification order application for it to become a bridleway. And then as you get to the site, on the left hand side so you walk up the lane, and then on the left hand side there's an existing footpath that goes around the outside of it, and then there's another DMMO proposal for a bridle path to go through the site itself, which is shown on the block plan. So there's no built development block in it, and a wicket would be provided to allow the horses to get through. It's not shown very clearly, but you enter where the small parking area is, and then go up north, and then it goes round where you've got like a round circle just south of the camping pods, which are the buildings to the north of the site, and then it carries on east, the route of the bridleway, and then the safety of the base of the slope. If you just bear me 2 seconds, just got to get to the relevant bit of the report. Yeah, so this was one of the recommendations of the slope stability appraisal report, which said that the catchment fences would be required to protect the visitors from falling debris, and then the inspection. So we've conditioned that would be done every 6 months. And then the final point was about the power source. Again, if the proposal didn't include any power, like with the solar panels, that wouldn't be a reason to withhold planning permission. It could be that they came to us and said we don't need any power, but we couldn't refuse it, because we said, if we turned around and said, oh well, you do need power, we couldn't refuse it on that ground. So we have to we just have to take it on face value that whatever they produce is what they'll have to use, and there's no real alternative unless they go for unless they come to us and ask for another means of power.
It's a bit cold up there in the winter.
Veronica.
Yes, Nigel has asked actually a number of questions I was concerned about. I'm also concerned about 3.2, which is a mixture of residential and non-residential participants. And you've got 9 residential students. It says adults, but there's no condition on it to say that they will be adults. So at any time they could use the facility for children. So I'm concerned about that. And the fact is, it does not demarcate in the pods where they will be sleeping at night, whether they will be from female or male. How will that be arranged? Where will the tutors sleep? Because if they are, will they be coming in daily? And the toilet facilities. Now, the toilet facilities are part of the shower block. Again, how they are arranged for male and female. I'm concerned about that. And it also the fact that they are only in that toilet block. In that one block at all. So if it's inclement weather, they will be going into the main building. Inclement weather, if they're sleeping in the pods, they have to get out of their pods and go across in perhaps torrential rain like we've had and snow like we had last night to go to use the facilities. I'm really concerned about that as well. I'm concerned about storage because it says in that one main block there will be for storage of equipment. It does not say anything about storage for food. Who will buy the supplies in? Where will it come from? How it will be delivered for all these people? All the cooking facilities, I think, will have a major impact from the fires into the ecology area. And there was something else I wanted to bring up. First aid. First aid. Nigel mentioned the fire emergency. I'm talking about if there's an accident. For many years, I was a member of a caving and mountaineering club, and I know accidents can happen, especially when you're in the wilds, where I've camped in the wilds. Now, you've got a scree there. You've got an unstable scree, which are on a rock face. And dangers can happen. People can have accidents, really nasty accidents. How can an ambulance be called if somebody has one and brought into the area? Also, the noise pollution. You're talking about noise pollution, about stopping at the curtilage of the pod music. But people talk and sound carries, especially at night. And you've got all those people in camp, because if it's going to be in the winter, what time will they finish? Will they go home if it's non-residential every day by minibus? But there will still be people there trying to cook in the dark. I said by using torchlight, not using anything else. They're going to be cooking by torchlight. That's what it says in the document. But there will be only lighting in the pods. They want to put lighting in the pods. How will that be achieved? And the fact that there will be certainly an impact on the surrounding area. Outstanding natural beauty, the Treble Cess Island, and the nature aspect of the whole area. Also, it will have an impact on the wildlife at night, because they'll be cooking in the dark at night, which disturbs any wildlife in the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Veronica. Andy, do you want to answer this question?
Yes, there's quite a lot to respond to, but in terms of the camping pods, there's 2 bunks in each. I don't know, and it's not a planning consideration, how they're split in terms of gender. But with the toilet block, again, it's not a planning consideration, but they are split north and south. It's not very. So the top half of the building is for females, and the bottom half is for males, or vice versa. But again, that's not something that we could control. In terms of the deliveries, again, the only aspect that we can consider as a planning authority is the vehicular movements, and our highways department are satisfied with the number of movements that are being proposed. That's subject to a slight upgrade to the existing concrete or tarmac road and the provision of some passing places. With the wildlife, the ecologists have taken into account the impact of not only the built development but also the operation of the site on the wildlife. So we've asked for this, or conditioned this ecological enhancement plan. We've restricted any, well, not restricted, but put a condition on to ask for details of the lighting to ensure that it doesn't interfere with bat migration. In respect to the noise, there is a fallback position that the permitted development rights do allow the use of land for camping, so there isn't anything to stop it being used temporarily for camping for a certain number of days in a year. Admittedly, not as many as the proposal is seeking here, which is all year round, but it would be the same impact for a shorter period. Hopefully I've covered most things, Chair. There was a lot, but
just a minute, Veronica, thank you. Just a minute. On page 25 of the report, the shower block is shown, and it shows a male part and a female part with a dividing wall between them. So as you've got female and male toilets separated by a solid wall in that block.
And the pods? I couldn't quite hear what they said about the pods.
Well, it's not a planning consideration how they manage it, whether it's split in gender, but there's 2 bunks in each pod, and it's up to the operator really how they arrange the sleeping arrangements. But there was one question I missed, Councillor Fletcher. It's you mentioned about controlling the occupants, about whether they're children or adults. Yes. That would form part of the Section 106 agreement.
Thank you. Could I just ask another question regarding the warden that's going to be on duty? Because I asked about getting the supplies and everything. If he is off-site for any reason, who would be in charge of the site at any time? And it's also envisaged at certain times of the year it will be closed. And how will that be managed, that the site is closed? And how often would that be? Because it says it's all year round, but at times it would be closed. So you envision that there will be time off when they will not be able to use that site. What circumstances would that be?
I think that was an operational choice rather than us imposing it as a condition. That was just the operator saying that they wouldn't be able to operate it 365 days, presumably because of staffing. You know, they can't provide staff for every day of the year. In terms of, again, this isn't a planning consideration, but when the warden, if they do have to leave site, there are these tutors that are there. There's between 2 and 4 tutors that are there if students are present.
There's a lot of questions that are really unanswered in my mind on this one. A lot of the questions I would have asked have already been asked, such as the one that's just been asked now. Access fencing, it's very vague about whether, I mean, my first concern here is about the wildlife in the area. And would there be fencing around the area, i.e. deers, things like that, and animals being endangered by fires in the area? I mean, people put themselves there. I'm more worried about the animals and the wildlife in the area that could be in danger. And we don't have enough areas where wildlife can just be wildlife. You know, I'm in controlled access, and another area of concern is if there is nobody there, if the warden is gone home for a week or 2, 3 weeks, what's to stop people breaking in there and just taking over, because that will happen.
In terms of the all the existing site boundaries are to be left as they are. and there's no boundary treatments proposed other than the new gate to the main entrance. In terms of the security of the site, that's similar to any proposal really. Again, that's not something that we can refuse the scheme on because it might be broken into, because that applies to everything really. I appreciate this is slightly more remote than most uses. Sorry, I missed the third question, Councillor Jones. It was to do with fencing, the security.
Fencing, security, and it is just about the wildlife in the area.
Yeah, well, as I say, the council as ecologist has considered this on 3 separate occasions, because when it first came in we had the preliminary ecological appraisal, and then we had they requested the additional surveys for the peregrine falcons and the dingy skipper butterflies, and then they're now satisfied subject to this ecological enhancement plan, and then you've got the biodiversity net gain. So from an ecological perspective, what this permission would do is actually ensure that the site is maintained and actually improved over 30 years, whereas without a planning permission it could just be left, or it could be cleared actually, because they've got an active felling licence from the Forestry Commission, so the timber could be removed and the ecological habitat could be removed. Sorry, Chad, I'd finished. I was just saying that they've got an active felling licence, so without the planning permission it could be the timber could be removed, but with the biodiversity enhancement plan and the biodiversity net gain, we can ensure that over the next 30 years there's actually an improvement from an ecological perspective.
Just one question. To prepare the site, will there be any damage done to the trees and any other vegetation around in the area? Will we lose any, anything that's important to the wildlife?
The buildings are in existing clearings. We've got some pictures on the file. The benefit of the site was that it was a quarry, so it actually sits in quite a recess. There's a bund, which we've said in the report, which is about 5 metres in height, and then the land around it varies between 25 metres and 45 metres higher. So it's in the basin of the quarry, and as I say, a lot where the buildings go in existing clearings.
Okay. Anybody else? Peter.
Yeah, I mean, really, I am minded to support this. A lot of the objections, I think the application is dealt with, to be fair, and a lot of it seems to be what if. Will we bring back more criminal behaviour and all that kind of things? But I think Andy's quite right to point out there's a lot of things we can't consider because they're not planning considerations. I also put members to look at page 8 and the support that's on there, because those reasons, I think, are more important than the objections. I just got one question though, Andy, please. In terms of the potential for a fire, I understand what everyone says about the wildlife, but wildlife does adapt. Anyway, is there any possibility for fire extinguishers with the ponds and the houses that are being built? Because that would obviously be something that during the summer, when it's quite warm and things are tinder dry, fire extinguishers would be very useful to suddenly localise a fire.
Yes, well, some of the buildings do require building regulations, and if they don't have the 45 metres of access from the highway, then I assume that the building regs would ask for it. Also, as a commercial operation, we all go into public places, and I'd assume that under their public liability they'd have to provide fire extinguishers because the members of the public are visiting.
Okay, because as I say, imagine we were now discussing whether we should give permission for Arthog. We'd all be saying yes, and someone would be saying no. It's very sort of, you get your own view, but I think generally this adds rather than subtracts to the area. So I would support it.
Anybody else? No?
I'll second.
I think it's a good plan, and I think I'm going to move for the recommendation to be adopted.
Recommendation been moved. Seconder, Jim and Peter. I assume this is the recommendation on the amended report, on the supplementary report.
The recommendation hasn't changed,
No. Okay. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Anybody against? Any abstentions? 1 abstention, 2 against. That is allowed then. Okay. Right. We're now going to page 33, which is CWC 2021-0806, land at the corner of Colliers Way, Rock Road. That's you.
Chair. This is a full planning application for the erection of a food stall, including the creation of new vehicle access, parking and associated landscaping. This application was validated in July 2021, submitted on behalf of Lidl UK. The applicants have submitted a significant amount of information in relation to both retail impacts and sequential tests to show compliance with local and national policy, and in doing so the Council have sought advice from specialists in retail planning. It is worth noting that the site has a historic planning permission for a restaurant public house, which was approved in 2018, and therefore the principle of this redevelopment of this site has already been established. Before going into the finer details of the assessment, I will pass back to you, Chair, the speakers.
2 speakers on this one.
Please, Mr. Chairman, could we have to speak up, please, because I missed all.
Apologies, got a terrible chest, but I will try.
I missed it all.
Okay. Ian Minto, please.
Good evening. My name is Ian Minto and I'm from Sovereign Centros, who act as the asset manager for the owner of the Telford Centre. As many of you know, the owner has invested in recent years in excess of £60 million into improving the retail and leisure offer. The last few years have seen difficult economic conditions to be delivering regeneration, but here in Telford we still have a track record. Most recently, we've worked on letting 3 department stores, the former Debenhams to Flit Out, the House of Fraser to the new Frasers Group, and also redevelopment of the former BHS. All have required significant investment, and we continue to fund further lettings to this day. Now, it's well known that national and local planning policies are all about protecting the town centre and ensuring regeneration can keep coming forward to support town centre vitality and viability. We are constantly fighting against out-of-town retail, and we would expect the council to be supporting us in line with the national and local policy. We've been objecting to the application, this application, and also one at the Forge for over a year, due to the inaccuracies of their approach to the sequential test and the town centre first policy. We have at least 2 sequentially preferable sites immediately adjacent to the Telford Centre in the form of Blue Willow and Lime Green car parks. We've promoted these through recent pre-application with officers, and indeed discussions in the last 12 months have been held with Lidl themselves, who have reviewed and previously drawn up plans for the Lime Green site. A pre-application meeting on Lime Green held earlier this year was positive, and the council asked us to look into car parking, land ownership and other technical issues. We are currently completing this exercise and would have expected time to do so. I can, however, categorically confirm that these sites are available and suitable. We're in the process of demonstrating that. It is therefore premature for the council to take this application to committee. In addition to this application, there are yet more retail schemes in the planning pipeline. Lidl applying for another store at Redhill Way, yet again an out-of-centre location. We're endeavouring to build a vibrant and successful town centre, accommodating occupiers who require more space. Setting a precedent by granting consent for out-of-town uses will only facilitate certain retailers leaving the centre. Failing the sequential test is reason to refuse the application, the council should be refusing and let us bring forward a town centre food store. If the council approve Rock Road and as such state that there are no sequential sites in the town centre, it will be open season in out-of-town retail in Telford. As the council's partner in regeneration of the town centre, we would expect support rather than being undermined. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Julie White, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm the agent for this application on behalf of Lidl. The applicants work proactively to deal with the feedback from council officers, consultees, residents and third parties, and we welcome your officers' very thorough report and presentation and their positive recommendation. Planning permission has already been granted on this site previously, as you've heard, and no objections to the use of the access or anticipated levels of traffic have been raised by your highway officers. With regards to the principle of retail development on the site, officers and their advisors have assessed the retail policy issues in a rational manner, following the requirements of the NPPF and local plan policies. Based on data from 2022, the applicant has demonstrated that there would not be a significant adverse impact on Telford or Lawley centres, a conclusion which your officers and their advisors have agreed with. The proposals will bring additional choice to the locality and a store that's within easy walking distance of the local community. Although we note comments regarding the lack of need for a new store, this is not a planning policy test and not relevant to the consideration of these proposals. Given Lidl's interest in the town centre, the sequential sites referred to by the objectors this evening have been fully appraised since they were first raised in January 22, and a number of issues have been highlighted. Of particular concern is that Telford trustees do not own the access to these sites, and the access is not adopted. After exploring these issues, it's clear that it could be years before this is resolved, and we would suggest, therefore, it's disingenuous of the trustees to be promoting these sites to which they do not control the access, and thereby expecting multi-million-pound investment decisions to be made on this basis. Your planning officers have therefore rationally concluded that based on their planning judgment, the car park sites will not be available within a reasonable period. It should also be noted that these sites have never actively been marketed, and if the sites were actually available, one has to question why it's taken the trustees more than 12 months to submit a pre-application inquiry, perhaps to derail the determination of this application and disrupt the planning process further. The proposals before you can bring significant material benefits to the local area, including substantial enhancements to the green network adjacent to the proposed store, alongside financial contributions for off-site mitigation, the developments in a highly sustainable location, accessible by pedestrians, cyclists, via the extensive network of routes in the area, and around 40 new jobs, the majority of which will be filled by people living within 5 minutes of the store. When considering the proposals this evening, I would urge you to consider all of the benefits and conclude, like your officers, that, on balance, the application can be supported and planning permission granted. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Back to you.
Bit of a lengthy introduction, but I want to try and cover as many points as possible. I'll try and project. I've got a very, very bad throat. Bear with me. As I mentioned in my introduction, this is a full application for the erection of a food store. In the first instance, Local Plan Policy EC5 seeks to prioritise the development of retail uses within the Telford Town Centre primary shopping area. The application site is not considered to fall within the primary shopping area of the Telford Town Centre, nor any other market, local or district centres. If any proposals are submitted outside of these centres, such as this, then the applicant will be required to submit a sequential test to demonstrate that there are no other alternative sites within these centres. Additionally, where alternative sites cannot be identified, a retail impact assessment would be necessary for any scheme over 500 square metres. This scheme is 1,920 square metres and was submitted with a retail and planning statement to support it. The initial sequential test sought to demonstrate that there were no sequentially alternative sites within the defined centres. Following consideration by our development plans team, in light of objections that were received from nearby food stores and the town centre landowners, this was in relation to Morrison's, Asda and the Telford trustees who have spoken tonight, officers considered it pertinent to instruct consultants with specialist knowledge of retail planning and Nexus Planning have therefore provided independent advice to the Council in this respect, which has been fed into the committee report. During consideration of the application, the applicants have undertaken extensive updates to demonstrate that the application would not have a retail impact on the centres. This has included a town centre health check and a new householder survey, which were undertaken to supplement the Council's outdated 2014 retail study. These submissions have been corroborated by Nexus Planning on behalf of the Council, who undertook their own independent town centre health check. The town centre is considered to be vital and viable, good footfall, high use of car parks, low level of vacant units, and promising future growth. Nexus have confirmed that from a retail impact perspective, they have no issues with the proposal. Additionally, they would hold no issues with the cumulative impact should the ongoing application at the Forge Retail Park also be supported by the Council. When considering the impact on the town centre as a whole, cumulatively, including both convenience and comparison turnovers, the trade diversion would be approximately minus 2.5%, which is not at a level which could be considered significantly adverse, and the application could not be refused on the basis of retail impact alone. During the course of the application, numerous representations have been made by Telford trustees, as has been discussed by Mr Minto in his presentation, claiming that both the Blue Willow and Lime Green car parks are available and suitable as alternative sequential sites, and that the applicants have discounted these erroneously. Further information has been supplied by the applicants over the course of the application in the last near 2 years, and this has been assessed by Nexus Planning on behalf of the Council to demonstrate why these sites are not available or suitable within a reasonable time frame. The latest advice that the Council received from Nexus was that there remains some ambiguity about these sites. Officers have considered this advice against the outstanding points. Officers are aware from discussions with the Council's estate teams and emails provided by the applicants from Homes England that the planned transfer of the land from Homes England to the Council dates back to the 1990s, and due to legal issues has not progressed since this time. Homes England have confirmed in writing that it is not a priority and can give no assurances of any timescales for when this may be actioned, given the delays thus far of over 30 years. Despite the Blue Willow car park remaining closed, which is of course the prerogative of the landowners, officers are still concerned about the principal loss of Blue Willow and Lime Green car parks in terms of the viability and vitality of the town centre and the potential negative impacts that their loss could have, with the updated town centre health check showing that all car parks were well used. Officers are of the opinion that the applicants have provided sufficient evidence to demonstrate that the car parks are not available within a reasonable time frame, particularly given that this application has been with us now for nearly 2 years, and officers themselves are concerned that the loss of the car parks could have a detrimental impact on the town centre which hasn't been justified. As such, officers believe that the evidence submitted by the applicants to date is sufficiently compelling to rationally justify a different conclusion from that provided by Nexus to the Council. Even if members were minded to disagree with officers' view and consider that the sequential tests have not been met and that these 2 sites were alternative sequential sites, this would not necessarily warrant refusal, and all material considerations must be considered in the planning balance. Officers consider that any conflict can be outweighed by other factors, such as environmental, economic and social benefits, and could therefore be supported in the planning balance. Technical constraints have been dealt with during the life of the application, with off-site contributions being secured towards woodland planting as a biodiversity offset, travel plan monitoring, and a highway improvement at the Rock Road Collier Way junction should it be necessary. A 3-year clawback period has been agreed with the local highways authority in this respect to allow the food store time to become operational to ascertain whether any highway improvement works are actually necessary. The Parish Council have been supportive of the application in principle, albeit they did raise queries regarding routing of delivery vehicles, which we will be securing by condition. No other statutory consultees have raised objection. Public representations are fairly evenly spread in both opposition and support, with numbers marginally in support being higher. The final comments of our independent retail consultants on the sequential test are acknowledged within the report, but the Council are not bound by these recommendations should they wish to pursue a different recommendation. Officers have taken account of all material considerations, and in the planning balance, our judgment is that the application should be supported and is considered to be in accordance with local and national policy. Thank you.
Right, it's open to the committee. Nigel?
Go first. It's quite interesting this. Normally when we have an independent consultant, we usually actually agree with what they say, but seems to be a bit of a row going on between this, but which is quite interesting for somebody who's been on the planning committee quite a while. All right, okay, so here we go. We're building on green network again, which just goes to show how useless the green network policy is. I am a bit concerned at 8.34. There is no solar panels at all, and I would have thought that Lidl, as a responsible supermarket chain, would have bought into that. So I'm a bit surprised about that, particularly with as most buildings now are some categories are actually required to have it. On 8.49, if the officer could just clarify on the Sunday opening hours, because we've got 10 till 5 on a Sunday, but my knowledge of the Sunday opening hours is you're only allowed to open 6 hours continuously on a Sunday, so it'd either have to be 10 till 4 or 11 till 5 on a Sunday. So I do think that we need to make sure that the opening hours conditions are actually legal.
We do have cases where some shops open.
Yeah, it depends on the size.
Open at 10, but don't start serving through the tills till 11.
Well, opening hours is when the tills are open. And on 8.5.3, it seems a bit bizarre that it says in the report that supermarkets not going to generate new trips on the highway network. But really, there wouldn't be any point in opening the supermarket if it wasn't going to generate any extra trips. It just seems a bit of a bizarre statement. My biggest concern with this one is 8.5.10, which is the turning point for the wagons, because the report says that the wagons aren't going to be able to turn without going because of the turning circle. They're not going to be able to turn into the into the supermarket onto the site without actually going into the oncoming traffic, which seems very, very strange. And I would have thought that highways would have insisted that there was the access was altered so that wouldn't happen. So if you just address those points, much appreciated.
Just in terms of the green network, I think I've shown within my report that there's only a small section. Could you just get the block plan for me? Yeah, that one there. So within the red line, where that small annotation is in the blue, that's the only section that's actually in the green network. So I think it comes to about 30-something%, with 20% of it being removed and 20% of it being planted out. I appreciate that obviously we have got a loss of the green network, but there has been a previous permission on this site whereby the principle of that loss has already been established, and actually this scheme we're looking at further enhancement to improve the green network, and the area to the far west is completely outside of the application site and will be retained in full. In relation to solar panels, obviously we don't have any adopted policy at the moment to request that and secure that. Obviously that is the prerogative of the applicant. In terms of Sunday opening hours, points noted, we have had a number of applications recently and variations whereby a number of supermarkets are now looking to gain that flexibility of 10 till 5 to allow some flexibility on the Sunday opening hours. So that's a sort of general change that we're seeing now. In terms of the no new trips, I think the comments from the local highways authority is not no new trips, but not many new trips. And I think they looked at the modelling and can see that most of the trips generated from this development will be those from passing trade, already on their way to work, already on their way to the school run, and that sort of thing. So you're not going to get many new trips just looking to utilise the supermarket itself. And then in terms of the turning of the vehicle, as you mentioned, there will be a crossing of the centre line to manoeuvre in and out of the site. but I think that's pretty standard practice, and I think what the local highways authority is saying is that there is space within Rock Road itself to accommodate that turning, and it will just be a matter of, as it is for any large vehicles going in and out of sites, a matter of being cautious in terms of making those manoeuvres, really.
I mean, the thing is that when you turn in off the roundabout, there's not a big distance between the roundabout and where the entrance will be. Particularly at peak times, that's going to be that could be quite significant. And particularly if the future developments down the road where the recycling centre was on fire, and if those come to fruition, you're going to get bigger traffic. You're going to get more traffic going down there when the Shropshire Star building has been levelled and whatever goes in its place. So there is going to be more traffic along there. I just think that the design of the entrance could have been moved or something done with it to prevent that. I mean, you could make it wider, for instance, onto the site. You could have you could pinch a bit of the site to actually make a filter lane so that the wagon has can make a turn. Just think it's just been sort of like left, and it's such a traffic danger that it's bizarre that we're actually being asked to approve an application that is going to create a traffic hazard when normally we're trying to mitigate things like that.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, Councillor Dudball. I think in terms of the local highway authority's opinion, there isn't a concern, there isn't a highway safety concern here. They've secured the 30,000 towards potential highway improvement works should they consider them necessary. At the moment they're saying that the junction is within capacity range. There are no local issues there that would cause them highway safety concerns. In terms of the route from the roundabout, that doesn't cause them concerns. I think the only reference in terms of turning footprint was out of the site itself, but that is not a technical reason to warrant refusal of the application. It's not considered to be significant or severe and wouldn't be something that is concerning for them.
Thank you, Chair. Being a ward member, and I've had a lot of people looking forward to this plan. They are very positive. They are, it's been going on for such a long time now. They really got worried that it may not happen. But having said that, the issue has already been sorted about the Rock Road. It's a narrow road, and that needs to be adjusted so that it can take all the traffic. But just having two HGV and off-peak period, it shouldn't cause any problems. And there's also a provision here say that a mini roundabout might be needed. That will be in the plan. That will be a good thing if there's a problem there. So I will be supporting this application. I can't see any reason for it.
Veronica?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Nigel has said quite a lot about one of the 8.510 about the turning area for the HGV vehicles, and I am deeply concerned about that because it is a safety measure. The other question I want to raise is on 8512, page 43, which is the formalised drop curb crossing are also proposed further to the north of Collier Way and Rockall Way to facilitate improved pedestrian passage to the store from this direction. And these are welcome additions to the sounding highways network. But it does not show, other than a crossing, it does not show that it's going to be a safety crossing. So that would then depend on cars stopping for pedestrians or other vehicles stopping for pedestrians to cross a very busy road, and you want pedestrian access into the building, especially as you're saying that there will only be people dropping off from their journeys to and from school. So I want to know if that could be improved so that there is more safety control on that pedestrian crossing. And obviously I wanted mitigation on 8.510 regarding the HGV vehicle. And the other thing I'd like to draw your attention to is page 45. regarding the coal site, the proposed, looking at the site because of deep buried mine risks on that area. Now we have that in my ward, which is partly in other parts, not just in Prisley itself, but in other parts where it's in the ward of Prisley, where there have been mines identified and underwriting mines. So I'm deeply concerned that this will be investigated thoroughly, because we do not want to have a disaster of trying to build in the middle of it and then they find that there is a mine there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
The proposal goes through,
just on the points of crossings, as you rightly say, Veronica, they're drop curb crossings. They're not meant to be pelican or anything like that, toucan crossings. It wasn't felt necessary for that level of highway improvements to be made. As I say, we have got this contribution that's set aside, and once the store is operational, we've got a 3-year period to look at that and see whether any highway improvements, that might be a mini roundabout, it might be further crossing points, but that's something for us to consider.
Contribution would cover something like that if the proposal goes ahead and if this is deemed necessary.
If it's deemed necessary, the local...
the health and safety, especially if they're going to take children with them as well, crossing the road, babies in pushchairs or buggies or whatever.
Yeah.
It is important that we get this right, because it is a very busy area, I know that.
Yeah. As I say, the local highways authority are not concerned about highway safety in terms of this site. The crossings that have been provided are an additional benefit, and they were happy with the level of detail provided for those. Once it's operational, if it's felt that further highway improvements are needed as part of a wider package, then that's something they'll consider. But at the moment, as it is shown, what is being proposed is considered to be sufficient for this development. In terms of the Coal Authority, the application was supported by an initial assessment which highlighted this high-cast open wall and a couple of mine entries that they were aware of. It's in a high-risk area. The Coal Authority were consulted. We had a lot of dialogue with them initially at the start of the application, and the applicants did as well directly, to ascertain what exactly was on site. So they actually went on site and did a lot more further investigation than would be done usually on site. We usually get the standard conditions from the Coal Authority, but in this particular site they went out and did those further investigations to understand exactly what was there, where it was, and how that would impact upon the unit and the car parks as well. So the Coal Authority are now happy with the further investigations that the applicants have done. They understand there will probably have to be some piled foundations incorporated into the design, and they've recommended a condition to ensure that they can make sure that those designs are suitable for what is found on the site. So they're now very happy and supportive of the application. And I think your final point was on HGVs, but I'm not...
Yes, I am really concerned about that, because again, it's the health and safety issue coming onto the road and going into the road. If some cars are coming in just as those vehicles are just going to turn, it is a big problem if they're in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
So I am deeply concerned about that, as well as Nigel has brought it up as well.
Again, I appreciate the concerns. All I can really say is that the Local Highways Authority don't consider it to be a significant impact and anything that would warrant refusal of the application. And there is the road space within Rock Road to accommodate those manoeuvres, and with how infrequently they would be.
Could you just confirm one other thing about the impact onto the town centre?
Yes.
Because of the town centre protection of, because I know in the past things have been refused. Sainsbury's was refused because of the impact on the town centre many years ago. I was on that planning committee, so I know that they are taken into consideration, and that was refused. Why is this one being agreed? Of the impact on the town centre, why is this one being agreed, please? Oh, not agreed, sorry, but being proposed.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I suppose just to reiterate comments I made in my introduction, really, they've undertaken a town centre health check to see at what position the town centre is at now, and also future growth, to show what is available in the town centre and how this proposal could impact upon it. As well as this proposal, they've also looked at the Ford retail proposal that is currently still live as well, to ascertain what impact there will be on the town centre and whether it is considered appropriate. Now, there will always be an impact on retail in the town centres. There always will with any proposal, but what we need to look at is whether that's significantly adverse. In this particular proposal, our retail specialists have told us there will be approximately a minus 2.5% trade diversion, which in their consideration of it is minimal and is not considered significantly adverse, and therefore the retail impact side of things would not be sufficient to warrant refusal.
And can I just ask, because as it's been rightly said by the report, that's only the passing traffic going to and from school that we use it. So what is the need and necessity for this retail provision on that corner?
Sorry, Veronica, I don't quite
Sorry.
understand the question.
It's okay, I've lost my voice as well,
Me too.
so I do understand. The report says it's only the passing traffic to and from the schools that would probably go into the store. Therefore, what is the need? What is the base? And that's only the local area, obviously. So what is the need for them to put this big, because it's quite a large size development that's going to go on that side. What is the need for the area if it's not going to go into the surrounding area, that is a necessity to put the store in place?
Yeah, just in terms of the mention of passing trade from the school, that's just in terms of traffic and the local highways authority's comments. In terms of need, that's not really something we have to look at. We're fed by the competitive market. If Lidl consider that there's a need for a supermarket in that location and can warrant it, and then it's okay in accordance with our policies, then we are to support it. We haven't got a policy that looks at needs of retail supermarkets.
So there's a need in the area for it.
According to Lidl.
According to Lidl.
We haven't got a survey that would show that. We haven't got a policy.
So people haven't made any approach at all that they need this.
I suppose all we can look at is the level of support that we've had on the application and go from there, really.
And I'm sorry again.
It's all right.
Jim.
I'm concerned about the comment about closing or using the two car parks. Come Christmas, we get inundated and stuck with traffic because people can't find enough parking spaces. And here we're talking about losing two car parks for building. So that's contradicting itself for the town centre, in my opinion. The other respect, a lot of people don't want to use the town centre or can't do with claustrophobic situation, and they would prefer to use a store nearer to them, save them having to use the car, and that. So it's a win-win for Lidl as far as I'm concerned.
Do you need to come back on anything, Jim?
No,
It's fine.
Environmentally, and we all need to be thinking environmentally in everything we do. I'm very surprised, and I'd like to see this council put in a policy for all solar panels in the future. I think it is really important. And also going back to the point that Jim's just made about people travelling into the town centre, there again, environmentally, not everybody's got a car, and it's very expensive now to have a car, to rent a car, and for people to pass their test. And people do need to walk, and that can be healthy in its own right. So,
thank you, Janice. Peter.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think the most worrying statement within this is the potential to lose two car parks in the town centre, and frankly, I hope we don't, because that will have an impact on it. Again, a good report, a full report. I'm not seeing anything in there that actually says to me you should be saying yes to this. I actually think it would be very good for the people that live in the locality. It's going to bring 30 jobs, I think the lady over there said. 30 or 40 jobs. Well, it's going to bring jobs, which is a good thing which we need. So really, there are no good reasons to say no to this, so I support it, and frankly, Jar, I'll move it.
Seconded.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. It's unanimous. Okay. I'm now going to page 97 of the report. It's the TWC 2022-0596 land adjacent and the site of a former Abacus Day Nursery, Main Road, Ketley. It's yours, Robin.
So this is a full planning application for the conversion of the existing building on site to 7 dwellings and the erection of 21 new dwellings on land to the rear. It's been heard at planning committee because it's council owned land and the section 106 is proposed with financial contributions. The development is in the form of 1, 2 and 3 bedroom units, including the provision of 5 bungalows for over 55s. The site is located within the built-up area of Telford in the adopted local plan, and the site is partly brownfield, partly greenfield by virtue of the existing building on the site frontage and then a paddock to the rear. The development is being delivered by New Place for affordable and market rent. 7 of the 28 dwellings will be for affordable rent, which meets the council's affordable homes policy requirement of 25% in this location. The existing building on the site frontage is the former Ketley Bank Board School, dating from 1878, together with the adjoining schoolhouse. The building was last used as a nursery, which is considered a community facility in planning terms and needs to be assessed against Policy Com 1. Officers are satisfied that the applicant has demonstrated that there is acceptable alternative community provision within walking distance of the site in the form of other nurseries and buildings as listed in the committee report. The former school and schoolhouse is also considered a non-designated heritage asset and has been put forward as a locally listed building on the council's register, which is currently under review. The interventions required to convert the existing building to residential, such as the introduction of dormers and roof lights, would result in a low level of harm to this heritage asset, which then needs to be considered in the planning balance against the public benefits of the scheme. The local planning authority have worked with the applicant through extensive pre-application discussions and amendments to the layout and the design to get to an acceptable proposal. The proposal meets national space standards, and the design of the new builds are designed to take a contemporary approach to reflect the mix of housing in the area. Access to the site is proposed from the northwest in that picture there. From Main Road. The secondary access point uses the existing ingress point to the site, providing access to the parking court. The proposal exceeds parking standards, and the local highway authority raised no objection to the proposal. So the proposal would secure education contributions to the value of 123,000, off-site open space contributions to the value of 33,000, as well as the delivery of 7 affordable dwellings and 5 bungalows for over 55. So in the planning balance, officers conclude that the public benefits of the scheme outweigh the harm to the heritage asset and that the proposal is in accordance with the development plan. It's officer recommendation that this application be granted for planning permission. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Robin. Over to the committee. Peter.
No great problems with this, to be honest, but there is something that leaps out at me again. It leaps out at me quite often, really. I was at a meeting this afternoon of NHS provision, and I asked the same question, so I'm going to ask you as a planning expert this one. One of the objections says lack of GP infrastructure to support new homes. Now, we hear that a lot, don't we? We hear that all the time. But why don't the CCG, or whatever they're called nowadays, or local surgeries ever apply for 106 contributions? Because that is as important, if not more important, than the money given to schools. This would have been another example of how we might start to readdress the problem of lack of GP spaces, and certainly extending surgeries. So, simple question, I suppose, after all that waffle. Why don't they, or did they and they were refused?
No, so as I understand it, CCG aren't a statutory consultee as part of any of our planning applications, and they're funded sort of separately and not through the planning process.
But the individual surgeries are individual businesses, so they could come forward and make, ask if there's any funding there. Surely they could do that. Because we will get this all the time, every time something over, say, a dozen houses comes forward, and we've never got an answer. And I will say, they don't call themselves CCG anymore. I forgot what they call themselves. But anyway, that's the one. They didn't know either, and they weren't aware that there is money available through development. So it's about time, really, we started to try and address that, because it's the number one complaint I hear whenever something's passed. What about doctors' surgeries? So.
Yes, Chair, if I could come in, please, because we have seen a cross-boundary application where the CCG did come forward, former CCG did come forward and ask for contributions based on... Is that the one at Ambridge? Well,
yes.
Yes.
I know that one, it's the only one,
and
isn't it?
It is the only one, because they've not felt that there's a need within the Borough of Telford and Wrekin to come forward and request for any individual circumstances that they haven't planned for. They are aware of what the local plan is in the local plan at this moment in time. They were involved in that consultation when it was adopted, and they've planned to cater for the additional population based in that. As we're moving forward and going through the local plan review, they are involved in that situation, and we meet on a regular basis with them to discuss what issues there are currently based within their remit and within ours, so that we can also plan for that as that comes forward. They're aware in terms of how they can engage within the planning process, and they've not chosen to do so on individual applications as yet. They've not had any identified need for that. So there is engagement. It is done at a strategic level at this moment in time. There is the ability to come forward, but at this moment they have not got any identified need, and that's for them to come forward and ask for.
That's weird when you think about identified need, because there's a massive one. But I mean, obviously, well, I know it is, but I just think that we should be seeing them coming forward now. But that's another story. You've answered me
before, so
yeah, I know, but it will still be part of it.
Yeah. Now I've got three speakers waiting. I've got Nigel Gilmore.
Yeah.
And then I've got Andrew, and then I've got Veronica.
Yeah. I mean, just carrying on from what Peter was saying, it's right. The GP surgeries are all private businesses, and they all have practice managers, and they've got the partners, and any of them could, if they were looking for an extension, and they were getting more they were going to get more patients, they could apply. I mean, I don't know whether or not it would be appropriate for sort of us as a local planning authority to approach them and say, well, this is going to happen, and so it's going to be,
So that's to go on the open market.
If you think of what's been going on at Priors-Lee, you think Shifnal Priors-Lee surgery, you'd have thought they'd have been crying out for an extension, wouldn't you, really? But anyway, that's by the by. So, just a couple of questions, because I haven't got, there's no problem with this one at all. I'm just concerned that, it's quite a nice Victorian building, and, sort of reading through the death throes of Abacus Day Nursery, who let the building get into such a state that a nursery wasn't viable, because particularly, as you just pointed out, with an expanding population, sort of the demand for nurseries, and with the announcement that free nursery care is being extended, the demand for nurseries is going to go even higher. So sort of it does seem a shame that the building's been let to get in such a state. My other question is 8.2 to 12, because New Place, the business plan for New Place only does affordable rent. They don't do they only do market rents. They don't do affordable homes. There's affordable homes on here. So presumably New Place are flogging off these affordable homes to a provider. So who is the provider who's actually going to look after these affordable homes?
And which ones?
So, well, I'm actually in with there'll be 7 affordable houses for rent as part of this provision. Whether or not it's a New Place or another registered provider, that would be secured via Section 106.
There's a difference between affordable housing, isn't there?
And marketable.
Or market rent.
There'll be market rent and affordable rent as part of this. So 7 of them will be affordable rent, which is defined as in the National Planning Policy Framework with the discount, and then the others will be market rent, which will be marketed at whatever the open market rent is.
You see on other applications, New Place, there's been either Wrekin Housing Trust or somebody like that who's looking after the affordable housing. So, because New Place don't do affordable, they only do market rent.
So that if they are going to flog them off to another, it would be a registered provider. That would be secured through the Section 106 agreement. We don't need to know, I suppose, here and then who the registered provider would be if they don't provide it themselves.
Strange.
And in terms of the existing building, that was a private nursery that had the lease for a long time. I think from 2002 to 2018. And evidently they didn't spend that. It's council owned.
But the council let it go into Wrekin.
The council leased it to a private company, and within that terms they were meant to maintain it, and obviously we got to the position that we're in now.
I know this area very well because it used to be part of my ward going back many years ago. And I have also seen lately that it's in such a bad state of repair that if nothing is done in a very quickly, it will probably be lost. It's a very iconic building for the Ketley Bank. And I think what's happening is to save it and make use for the affordable housing for the local people, save it for the local peoples, and also there's a contribution towards education and facilities, the nearby playing recreation facilities, and on the whole I think it's a good project. I'm glad that somebody could do something about this. Okay.
Again, Rick. Veronica?
Yes, regarding item... Gosh, I've got it marked. On page 102, 8.27, you refer to a planning statement making reference to our community centre as an alternative location for community use. I'm a member of St George's and Prisley Parish Council, and the Parish Council will be taking their offices there. They're going to be signing the lease agreement, and therefore there will be a community use plan when it's all gone out to consultation with the local people. I want to know why this has been included in this, because Ketley Bank and where this site is such a long way from St George's. There's no direct bus route. It's a terrific walk to get there. And 5 of the residential property will be bungalows for people aged over 55. So I can't see them making it, because Ketley Bank is a long, long road on a steep incline. I know, because I've been on it many times. And so I don't think it is within walking distance, and I just want to know why this has been included, because it goes on this because of the value of the scheme on the Gower. Despite this, the community centre is the element being to some extent cross-subsidised by delivering of houses on part of the site alongside the community facility. Well, there's a number of houses going to be built in, and in the Gower itself there'll be 2 apartments, There will be a space for community use as well as the parish council offices. There'll be offices to be used on the first floor, but there is no disabled access onto the first floor. So it'll just be the room, as I say, for community use, and offices to be let out. And as I say, parish council will be taking over and managing it, and will also be paying rent, as will all the other residents in all the other buildings around the site, and also from the 2 flats. So I can't understand why this is in this report. The other thing I want to bring to your attention is plot 28, which is the amenity value of that is under the against the policy, because it's less than what it should be, and part of the development of the amenities is being put in the document are not full amenity space on it, on some of the houses. So I'm a bit concerned with that we've been asking to support this, where it actually says on 8.312 that when considering the harm against non-compliance with policy, the decision maker must balance this harm against the benefits of the scheme in this regard, and the proposal would deliver the following benefit. And it goes on to say what that is. Also, for number 28, I think you're proposing an extra access from the main road to go into that part of the site. So there'll be 2 access points into the site, and one to take account of number 28, which again is only there because there was an ash tree that was blown down, and the ash tree was removed, and therefore they decided to put this extra plot on that site. So I've got great concerns on those aspects. If you'd like to reply to that, please.
Yeah, in terms of the inclusion of the gower that's mentioned in this report, so that's because we have to assess, I suppose, the loss of the existing community facility against policy COM1. We've asked the applicant to look at nursery facilities in particular because of its existing use as a nursery facility, and through discussions between the applicant and the council's own education team, there are a fair few nurseries within walking distance of the site, with nursery spaces available. So
there's no nursery provision going to be in the Gower?
No, not in the Gower, but then we also asked them to look at what other community facilities there are in the area. I think the Gower is about 1.5 miles from the site, so perhaps not walkable for everyone, but is walkable. But we do consider that to be...
there's no community agreement then?
Not yet, no, but that is proposed as part of the...
And of course this will be monitored, this will be administered by a new place?
Yes.
As well?
Yeah, it's the same. There's the same applicant there.
And on the other concerns I have?
And then on the private amenity space, yes, so the plot 28 was introduced through the determination process. That's because the ash tree on site, that T4, is diseased, it's got ash dieback, and it can't recover now. There are various ash trees on this site that can't recover, and our tree officer has been out to site to meet the applicant and agree that it's not rectifiable and these trees can't be retained anyway. So that's why plot 28 was introduced. Plot 28 itself does have sufficient amenity space, but it's the plots to the south, I think it's 19 and 20, that are sort of, I suppose, in size. When you quantify the gardens, they do meet space standards, but they are overshadowed by the tree group to the east. So the usable amenity space is then reduced. So yes, it's not an ideal situation for garden space, private amenity spaces, but we do have to consider, we can't just consider those 2 plots in isolation. We have to consider the whole scheme as a whole, and the benefits of the scheme in terms of bringing this vacant building back into use as well.
The extra access in for 28.
And then access, well,
And
the
it's
second,
overlooking as well.
the second access point was proposed anyway because it needed to, that courtyard needed to serve the existing buildings that were the buildings that are being converted, so units 21 to 27. Because of the loss of the tree, there was extra space for communal area and parking for 28. So those have, yeah, it's not an additional access point, although there are two. And at the moment, it's an ingress. You go into the site one way and you come out the other. So there's no concern from highways in terms of that. And then you can't take a vehicle access through that secondary access point. It's just the courtyard, and then it's a footpath. And then, well, plot 28, yes. I mean, if someone did occupy that plot, there is a path next door to it where they could be overlooked, but that's not too uncommon with properties, and they will know that when whoever takes on this property.
So what mitigation could be put on that piece of land then for overlooking?
There's no mitigation. It's just where if passers-by look into your property, then you obviously it's your decision whether you put curtains up or something to stop them looking. But yeah, there's no mitigation for that.
Did that lead to a problem?
It's not too uncommon that you have footpaths next to people's houses. When you walk around estates, you do see it. So, and yeah, whoever took on this property will know that from the plan they have a footpath next to their property.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Been moved and seconded the recommendation. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Yep. Thank you, Robin. If you need to disappear, Robin, you can do.
Thank you.
No, I know what. Yeah. Robin, thank you for all your assistance over the last 4 years.
Thank you.
For me, anyway.
Ever. So, thank you. Thank you for answering all my questions. No, thank you. This with you and the group.
Thank you, Robin. Right, I'm now going to move back onto the agenda. 5.3 and 5.4, it's page 71 and 72, 73 to 96. And that is the site of Portico House and 22 Donnington House in Vineyard Road, Wellington. And that both those reports are the same. So we'll do the two together. Makes sense. Yeah. Andy.
Thank you, Chair. So the application seeks full and listed building consent for the redevelopment of the site to provide residential accommodation amounting to 9 units, 5 apartments consisting of 4 2-beds and one bed would sit within the late 18th century listed building of Portico House, with 2 flats and 2 dwellings, all 2 beds, to the rear within the 1970s flat roofed extension of Donnington House. The scheme is before Planning Committee as it secures monies for off-site recreation as it forms part of a scheme for 12 dwellings with 3 bungalows having previously been granted and constructed to the rear of the property. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. There's no speaker on this one. Open to the committee. Graham.
Yeah, there's not really a question because I'd just like to say thank you because this place has been an eyesore for years on me and it's caused me a lot of problems, so I welcome the site being developed.
Veronica.
Thank you. Yes, I know this because of scrutiny. When I'm on health scrutiny, we've been there when it was in drug use, so on scrutiny programme, so I know what it looks like. So I have a couple of questions, please. It's regarding the access, obviously, from Crescent Road onto the we're going to be having the parking where the refuge lorry, which is going to be smaller, that's going to go on to that site. But obviously, in the report, it says that there are, at the moment, there's 3 bungalows being constructed, and they've got parking spaces. Now, with the and that will be at the back. It's at the back where you've got the red lines for this application. And if you look on page 83, it's blank. It doesn't show the bungalows. It does show it on page 87, on that side there. So you've got two documents which don't show the bungalows, which are being part of the construction at the moment, as I say. And they have looked to have about at least 10 parking spaces. Then you have the access, which will display coming on Crescent Road into the car parking, which will be for Portico House and Donnington House. And I'm concerned regarding the impact, because you will have the refuse lorry obviously coming in, trying to turn around, so I hope there's enough turning circle for the smaller one to get in and out safely with the cars there. But you'll also have the impact of these car spaces and cars on the existing buildings of 3 bungalows and their car spaces. So what has been mitigated for that actual impact on that site as well? And I know that at the beginning of you've got to have a new entrance into Portico House, and I presume that will be for deliveries, because a very, very narrow access along the side, because the one obviously is attached to the other building next door. So on the, as you're looking at it from Vineyard Road, on the left, it's only a very, very narrow way round the buildings. So I presume any other deliveries will come through Portico House and then into Donnington House. So can you confirm that for me, please?
Yeah, of course. So the bungalows that have been constructed, they're shown on the block plan, which I appreciate is a bit small, but both developments are being done by the same developer. The bungalows aren't occupied yet, but the spaces that are within the blue line are the 6 spaces that need to serve the bungalows. So that was as permitted before, yes. And that's sufficient. So,
yes,
so
but it's the impact. I'm concerned about the impact of these other car spaces, and obviously the refuse lorry is going to come in onto the car spaces there, and the bungalows themselves. The impact of all that. Vehicle activity.
What we had previously
because it was open before. There was an open area before this application.
Yeah, so in 2020 we had a scheme that went around the whole of the site, so including where the bungalows are. We weren't happy with the scheme for Portico House and Donnington House, but we were fine with the bungalows. So we permitted a separate scheme for the bungalows, so we always knew that both would take place together. So when we permitted the bungalows, we knew that the parking arrangement for Portico House, as is shown now, would be as it is. So in terms of providing some separation, we've got some hedging, and I don't know if Chloe you're able to zoom in slightly. There's some hedging that's proposed between the red and the blue line. It's quite hard to see, but it's a little squiggle just to the south of the blue line. So it just provides some defensible space really for in front of the bungalows and in front of their parking areas. In terms of the refuse vehicle turn-in, the upside down T, if you would, which is in the red line, that's the tracking for the vehicle. So it wouldn't need to go up as far as the bungalows. It would come in, turn right, go level with the parking spaces within the red line, and then there's space to reverse to the left hand side of the plan, and then it would be in a forward view then, and then it would be able to go out. So the lorry won't have to go up as far as the bungalows.
And the impact of the other cars coming in and out into that other car park, what impact do you perceive to be on that? Because I think there would be an impact.
Yeah, we've put a bit of defensible space between the park, because you've got the bungalows and then you've got their parking, and then you've got a hedge. So there is quite a bit of separation between the two. And the other point to make is that the bungalows aren't occupied yet.
No, I realise that.
So the developer will make them aware that.
What the problems are.
Well, yeah.
There's a potential concern, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it will come up. So if somebody were to buy the bungalow, it would come up in the searches that there's a planning permission.
And the fact is that they've got to go through another car park to get to their own car park.
Yeah, so they would have a right of access.
Up that long, narrow road.
That's right, yeah. So in the deeds of the bungalows, there'd be a right of access over the shed, car park, out onto the highway.
And then the impact on the highways from that.
Yes, well, highways have been consulted, and it is a narrow track.
It is.
But what we've done is balance the previous use, which could have been.
Oh, yeah, I know what the previous use was. Yeah.
Yeah, so if it had come back into use as a community facility, then that would have been greater than the use.
You've balanced that, have you?
Yes, yeah. So
because I can't remember what the uses was, but I know it's heavily used.
Yes, yeah. So our highways are satisfied with that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, Nigel.
Yeah, just professionally, I've been to Portico House on many occasions.
You know as well, Andrew.
So I know what it's like, and how bloody awful Donnington House is. So, but anyway, I mean, I haven't got a problem with this at all. The only thing is that the car parking at the front of Portico.
Yeah, that's
House,
what I've already asked that one.
It might be better to be reconfigured so that cars aren't tempted to reverse onto Vineyard Road. But the other thing is that is there going to be bin storage on there as well? Because or is all the refuse going out the back? Because it's quite a long way if you've got a flat in Portico House to go all the way back to. I'm assuming that by that turning circle is that bin storage. It's so small I can't see.
It is, yeah.
So presumably the people with flats in Portico House are going to put their bin out at the front of Vineyard Road, and so if you've got car parking spaces there, and then they've got to turn around to try and get out onto Vineyard Road without reversing onto the road. It just needs reconfiguring a little bit.
Yeah, as I understand, it will be serviced not by the council for the bin storage. It'll be a private company. So there's only 3 parking spaces on the front, so there's not enough spaces to serve each unit in Portico House anyway. So at least one of those units will have to park at the back, and it's not uncommon for flats to have to use the communal bin storage. So I don't think there would be any wheelie bins put out on to the front of Portico House, and that they would use the communal bin storage at the back.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, seconded.
Move second recommendation. There's two reports, so we've got to take both of them.
Yeah.
The first one
it's
is
the
the listed building. Yes, the listed building one. They are the same. So, all those in favour of recommendation, let's please show. The second one, that's unanimous. The second one then, all those in favour of the recommendation, please show. That's unanimous as well. Right. One to go, and then exclusion. Item 5.6 is 2023 0028, the site of the former Stirchley Recreation Centre, Grange Avenue.
I will abstain on the speaking on this one.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Veronica.
Yes. I don't know what page number it's on now, but it's talking about
143 it is.
For the storage of scooters. Now you've got an extra number of rooms going to be on this. I just wondered how that is going to be managed. If you've got people with scooters, how will that be managed if you don't know the number of scooters storage? Are we on the right one? Am I on the right one?
Yeah, we haven't started.
Presented.
We haven't started yet.
Oh.
That's what we're best to do.
I'm anxious to go home.
She wants
Sorry.
to go home.
You had enough of
I tell you what, ahead of yourself, Ronnie.
Sorry.
Keen, Veronica Keen. This is an application for the redevelopment of the former Stirchley Recreation Centre, which was demolished in 2015 for an extra care home. The redevelopment of this site was approved in committee in May 2022 for a 67-bed extra care home, and what we're considering tonight is a revised scheme. Following feasibility studies undertaken by the applicants, it has come to light that construction costs for the approved scheme have escalated, and it was necessary for them to produce a revised scheme. The varied form of this application is set out at para 3.3 of the committee report, with the main items being the increase from 67 to 72 bed units, revising the balconies to be Juliet, omitting the solar panels and reducing the building footprint. All other areas are minor and relate to materials. The increase in unit numbers relates to a further 6 number 1 bedroom units, making them 66 number 1 bedroom units, and instead of 6 number 3 beds, we're now looking at 6 number 2 beds. This makes little difference to the overall configuration of the development, and officers are happy with this change in principle. In terms of car parking requirements, this increase of units relates to an increase in staff numbers, and it has been demonstrated that a further 3 car parking spaces above the previously approved scheme would be required. There remains adequate capacity within the adjoining car park for these spaces to be accommodated, and the local highways authority have raised no objection to the application. Of the 21 on-site parking spaces, 4 of these are EV charging points and therefore accord with our climate change guidance. A number of technical details have been submitted with this application following liaison with officers, including materials, a construction environmental management plan and full drainage details, and therefore this has allowed the conditions to be limited this time. There have been no objection raised by statutory consultees and no neighbouring properties. The Parish Council have raised objections, but they are in principle issues that were raised with the previous scheme and have been considered appropriately through the application and or conditioned accordingly. As such, on the basis that the scheme differs only marginally from that previously approved and all the technical consultees are happy with the proposal, officers are recommending approval.
Thank you, Penny.
Thanks, Chair.
Now goes to the committee. Veronica,
Well, there's a couple of issues, obviously, but the one query I wanted to ask is that there's a storage unit for scooters. Now, you've got 72 rooms. Are they allowed to take the scooters up because it's up on the left? Are they allowed to, if residents want to take their scooters up to their rooms, are they allowed to do that? But there would obviously be a limited number of storage spaces. How would they be allocated for people if you've got more people wanting to store their scooters than you have spaces? So that is a concern. And the other concern I have is on the parking. Again, that it's on split sites, the parking is, and that according to the representation from the station book site, that there will be a significant issue with contractor access and parking during the build, which would need to be managed very carefully. And that there is a potential light nuisance from the site and its parking areas for its neighbours. So, and of course Grange Avenue will be impacted obviously by the further construction. So can I ask you if you can answer those questions for me, please?
Of course I can answer that. In terms of the scooter storage, without knowing obviously the operations of the business itself, I would assume that they could take the scooters to their bedrooms.
It doesn't say so in the
again, it's not really a planning consideration, but
people have relied on them from where they are down into where they need to go.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
if they have to access the scooter in storage, if they're not allowed in, then again, how many people will be allowed to store scooters? I mean, it is a concern.
Appreciated. Again, it's not a planning consideration. They have provided a scooter storage facility which they would manage as part of the development. I'm sure that they could take it to their rooms, but I'd imagine in most cases they probably prefer to have it in the storage facility. But that, again, it's not a planning consideration, it's something that we can really manage. In terms of the contractor access, I think this is probably going to come up. To the south of the site there is an existing car park that's utilised by the church on occasions. the applicants have come to an agreement with the owners of that car park, and that area will be utilised for parking of all their contractors, the storage of their materials, and the construction environmental management plan that is submitted with the scheme and as being approved as part of the scheme includes it all being on that area. So the actual Stirchley Leisure Centre car park will not be impacted during the construction process. So there will be no construction traffic going through the car park for the leisure centre at all.
Okay, Nigel?
Yeah, well, I remember the original application for this, and you know, the two points that makes it difficult to support is the fact that it still overlooks the nursery. I know that it's an extra metre away, and I know that they're not residential windows, but that doesn't matter. They're still overlooking the nursery. And then the even bigger concern is, of course, get back to parking provision. Surprise, surprise. I mean, normally we're looking at we're being asked to support applications that sort of are a few spaces short, but not usually half. I mean, you know, that's a hell of a, you know, 50% of the required spaces, and plus the fact that there's going to be extra pressure on, because you know, sort of the report makes big of the bistro and how there's going to be community facilities, so you want to attract even more people. And yes, there is a car park by the schools, and that car park is very full. And I know that because I used to visit the school. My wife used to work at the primary school, so I know it very, very well. And therefore, you know, sort of, I can't support this because it doesn't comply with our own rules and regulations.
Just in terms of the overlooking of the nursery, I know that was a point that you raised at the previous committee, and as you mentioned, this one is a further metre away, so it is an enhancement to the previous scheme. I think what we need to bear in mind is that that is an extant permission. They could build that out now if they wanted to, so the situation could be worse than the scheme that's before you now. In terms of the parking, I think what I need to make clear is that there is sufficient car parking available. On site, within that red-lined area, are 21 spaces. They need an additional number of spaces, but they've got a right of access and a right to utilise that car parking facility. Now, they've undertaken a car parking survey, which they agreed the timings of with the school to make sure that they were catching the peak times. And there were two surveys undertaken, one in July 21 and one in March 2022. During the peak times, which was school pick-up, so sort of between 2 and 3 o'clock, there were still 29 vacant spaces, and the site, this proposal, needs 21. In off-peak times, where the care home is meant to be the most busiest, so 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, there were 57 vacant spaces. So these surveys have demonstrated there is adequate capacity within the car park, which they have the right to utilise to facilitate this development, and our local highways authority have corroborated that and agreed with it. So they don't consider that there is a highways impact in terms of car parking, and that the site can accommodate the units and the staff that will operate from it.
Well, we'll have to agree to disagree on that.
Okay, anybody else? Hamlet, do you want to?
No, I'm happy with the. It's a good brownfield place, and I'm happy that something being done, and there's a great need for the care homes, the shelter homes, so all for it.
Peter?
No, I should say move it.
No further speak. The recommendation that is before you. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Any against? And one abstention from Jim, because he's parish council. So there's two. Okay, just sorry, Veronica.
May I say a little thank you?
Yeah, but we're not finished yet.
Oh, we're not finished, are we?
No. I need to. Item 6 is the exclusion of the press and the public.